Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. When you serve a sustainable human demand as an investor, you stand to be a profiteer. Real estate provides humans with housing, and it also provides them with necessary calories. What's the opportunity for you to create cash flow in agricultural real estate investing without operating a tractor or getting your hands dirty? Today on Get Rich Education. Finally, with Total Control Financial, get checkbook control of your existing 401k and IRA funds to invest in real estate. Yes, you can move your retirement money into your own checking account, but you must avoid the little-known tax that you'll get hammered with in a self-directed IRA. Instead, start your QRP. Learn more and get your free copy of the QRP book by text messaging QRP in all capital letters to 72,000. The company that's provided our listeners with more loans than anyone is Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. You can finance more than 10 single families up to fourplexes. Serving most U.S. states, their knowledge and experience leads to your financial freedom. They're number one in the investment space. Pre-qualify and then chat with President Chaley Ridge personally. Start on your next investment property loan right now at ridgelendinggroup.com.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Now, hopefully, you plan to be alive for the long term, so then it makes sense to invest for the long term. So really, you want to invest where there's going to be long-term demand, whatever form that demand comes in. Humans need a place to live and food to eat, and even futurists don't see that changing anytime soon. The world's population is now 7.75 billion people, and it's projected to grow. Now, I found it interesting where recently at a conference, Jack Ma, the Alibaba founder, and Elon Musk, the SpaceX and Tesla founder, made some pretty well-publicized remarks about how businesses may need to adjust amongst the changing demographics of slowing population growth, and then eventually, way out there, a population decline as societies continue to develop and have lower birth rates. I thought those comments really missed the mark as they're just trying to be trend spotters. That is way out there in the distant future. Don't miss the bigger point. The overarching theme is that every credible world population projection shows that we're going from 7.75 billion people today up to fully 11 billion humans on this earth by 2100. That's an increase of more than 40% in just the next 80 years. Now, arguably, there's more land out there that's suitable for building new housing than there is for planting crops. In fact, crop-worthy land, arable land, has decreased by 1/3 in just the last 40 years. So I like the long-term supply-demand imbalance for certain types of agricultural real estate. It looks great if you're with a reputable operator and depending on the crop type. One of the crop types that we're talking about today, which is coffee, has such sustainable demand that coffee is, in fact, the second most traded commodity in the world. It's second to oil. Now, I don't often like to mention what I personally invest in here on the show because I found that then some people will invest just because I'm in it, and what's right for me isn't necessarily right for you. But I know that I've mentioned on air before that I've personally invested in what we're discussing today. In fact, I was one of their earliest investors more than 5 years ago. Now, you know what they say about the earliest investors in new ventures, right? It's the pioneer, that frontiersman, that gets the arrows shot into their back. So why didn't I die from getting arrows shot into my back? Well, it's because I had a high-quality introduction to this group 6 years ago. That's what really engendered my trust in the team. And this is key. Just think about the fact that depending on you as an investor, you might only make 20 substantial investments for the rest of your life. And you can really think about today's as a legacy type of investment. Today, we're talking about investing in your own producing coffee farm parcels in Panama, where this group launched this model in 2014. And a few years later, they extended it to cacao farm parcels in Belize. In fact, this team has become so successful and influential with what they're doing that they now own Remax Panama, the real estate brokerage for the entire nation there. Now, what's interesting for you to understand is that though I've got you thinking about tropical places now, much of this provider's recent emphasis has gone into thinking instead about that end consumer who is buying the coffee cherries and cacao pods that grow in these tropical places. Well, it's really not the people in Latin America that are the consumers for these high-end crop varietals that are being produced in this case. Instead, the world is your customer for these crops. And that operates unlike your rental home that you own in Alabama that is rent to Alabamans. So your consumer, if you will, is not locals like it is in your residential real estate. Instead, the world is your customer. Highly developed nations like Belgium and Switzerland, those places are known for chocolate, for example, but of course chocolate doesn't grow there. Or Japan, with its taste for and its ability to pay a high price for coffee and tea, but of course no coffee grows in Japan. So it's really about this group's ability to understand that end consumer that's helped lead to their success. Now, to me, personally, living in more northerly places during my life, Pennsylvania and Alaska, it feels really exotic to own your own Panama coffee parcels or Belize chocolate farms. And it is exotic, but exotic is not reason enough alone to invest in something. It just happens to be those things. In fact, I attended their first ever coffee farm investor tour in Panama, and then later their second ever chocolate tour in Belize. Yeah, I got to walk my own parcels, and these tours are really some of the most interesting real estate tours that I've ever attended anywhere. We're going to discuss how you're paid and what rates of return you can expect and more. You've heard company co-founder David Sewell on the show here with me before. Today, the other co-founder, Darren Doyle, joins us along with David. I think of it as a gradual succession plan from David to Darren. Let's meet them. I'd like to welcome onto the show Darren Doyle and David Sewell. Together, they founded a company more than 5 years ago that lets regular people like you create income from agricultural real estate. Darren and David, welcome to Get Rich Education.
Thank you very much, Keith. Thank you for having us.
Thank you too, Keith. It's a pleasure to be back.
That was Darren's voice and David's voice, respectively. With this, everyday people can own coffee farm parcels. That's what you've made available. So they, the everyday person, can own the land 1/2 acre at a time, get not monthly, but annual cash flow from the harvest and the sale of coffee. And it's done in an all done for you way, turnkey managed by an expert team of soil scientists, a value chain analyst, laborers, and investors can't get loans for the property, but they can buy each 1/2 acre for under 20 to 25K. And we can talk more about the pricing later. So any thoughts on my overview there?
No, you hit the nail on the head. The idea when we created it 5, nearly 6 years ago now was to make agricultural investing available to the everyday guy and girl on the street, because beforehand you had to own whole farms, and also to make it turnkey available that you didn't have to move to Latin America if you chose not to do so.
Not every American is ready to move to Latin America and become their own farmer. So that's what's interesting. The farms aren't in the United States. They're in Panama. And I think a lot of people wonder about that. And of course, commercial coffee largely isn't grown in the continental United States due to climate. But are there other reasons for being outside the U.S.?
Well, for coffee and for the business we're in, which is specialty coffee, coffee grows in what's called the coffee belt, which is between the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer, either side of the equator, and Panama fits snugly right in there. You can grow some coffee above and beyond it, but the quality is your commercial level coffee that you get in your Folgers can. So specialty coffee that we grow cannot be grown inside the US, and Panama, specifically Boquete, Panama, has the ideal growing conditions for specialty coffee. So good so that in the last 3 years running, it has broken the records year on year to be officially the best scoring specialty coffee in the world.
That's right. This is that specialty coffee, higher grade stuff, not the commercial coffee that comes in a big can.
Correct. And I think specialty coffee is not just a marketing term like gourmet. It's a scientifically measured. A good analogy is people are used to wine. Wine gets cupped and graded by a sommelier, and they understand why it's a $5 bottle of wine versus a Chateau Margaux. So it's the same with coffee. It's cupped and graded. It's awarded a score from 0 to 100. Anything above 80 is specialty, and that's what demands the special price.
Yeah, much like the grading system that Wine Spectator magazine is recognized for pioneering for grading finer wines, we have a specialty coffee association that grades coffees, anything 8 or greater being that specialty product. And that's really what you cater to. So you're not going for that everyday consumer. As the world's population grows, it seems like the world's population also has increasing tastes for finer flavored things with this increasing affluence.
Keith, we want to keep in mind also that we created this company specifically for your listeners and many other listeners like them who are looking for offshore hard assets where they can diversify away from the stock market and away from the United States of America and all the other issues that go with that. So to provide an offshore hard asset like a half-acre parcel on a specialty coffee farm would be hard to do from Ohio. So that's why we're in Panama.
Now, I think some people might look at your model and say, well, hey, aren't you operating kind of inefficiently here? What you've done over the years is previously you bought more of these old farms that had been operating potentially for generations, but they just didn't really have that science applied and they weren't optimizing things. And you've come in and take over these farms, what we might call a transitional model. But as time has gone on, there's been fewer of those old farms to buy. So what you often do is purchase raw land and then start anew with a fresh slate. You're not buying very big plots each time. You're usually buying these smaller tracts that are less than 100 acres. And I think that throws some people off. And some people think, well, now for profitability, shouldn't there be big commercial farms for economies of scale? Can't you grow specialty coffee on big farms? So tell us more about that.
It's exactly the opposite to that. The large-scale, commercial quality, vast fields worth of coffee that's grown and processed by machine is commercial-grade, low-quality, high-volume coffee. We're in the low-volume, high-quality, hand-picked, hand-processed, micro-lots, individually managed, done on mountainsides where everything has to be done by hand, grown in the shade, and zero defect, very small micro lots. So you don't need vast fields, and there's not very many large fields available in Boquete, Panama. It's a scarce resource. There's less of them now. And we did start off basically rehabbing old farms that we would buy, inherit the older trees, and to use a real estate term, to rehab them. And sometimes you were taking over generations of bad farming practices. So what we switched to in the last couple of years was identifying virgin land that had been untouched, perfect, amazing soil, natural microclimates, but had been previously unfarmed. And then with our team, we could engineer the perfect specialty coffee farm from scratch. So we'd identify this area has more shade, so it's better suited to this type of coffee. This area hasn't got the best soil, so we'll use that to build our infrastructure. Which area was best suited for which varietal? And we could really engineer it from scratch with a blank canvas.
That's right. So as opposed to the high volume, low quality farm, you have these low volume, high quality farms. And that enables you to control a few things rather than these huge scale farms all dumping their crop yield from various places all into one bin for processing, if you will. With these smaller farms, you've controlled things. You do your own in-house processing, and that way you have your coffee specifically sourced so that you can get that higher price per pound.
Correct. And that the specialty coffee market and the roasters that do pay the prices for this specialty coffee, they want to know exactly what farm it came from, there's a full traceability system from seed all the way through to the finished bean. And they want to know exactly how that micro lot was managed, who picked it, what side of the mountain it grew on. And we can individually manage all these micro lots. And it's just something that's not possible on a large scale kind of system.
Single origin coffee, where you can put a story on the back of the bag for discriminating consumers and pampered pooches, people like me.
There you go. People want to see where their product is coming from these days.
Now, since you've operated this model for 5+ years now, I mean, there's certainly been some changes over the years ever since you took your model, made it successful in Panama. You certainly have had to make some tweaks from management to the deeding process and everything else in between. So tell us more about sort of the metamorphosis of the business and some of those changes that have occurred in the last 5+ years.
Well, when we started out, we used to jokingly say we were a real estate company with a little bit of coffee. Now we're a coffee company that you can also buy real estate in. So now that we went from being our first little 3.3 hectare farm, me, David, and 1 or 2 employees, to I think we have across the whole company 80 something employees now, 17 farms across the 2 countries. We've ended up with a real operating business, and we're in the coffee business now. So we have farmers to manage. We make payroll every week, and we're managing the product side of things versus focusing originally just on the investment side. So now David is spending, I think, 2 or 3 times this year. He was in Japan, getting introduced to specialty coffee buyers over there, introducing the company and developing the coffee side of the business versus the first few podcasts we were on with you. We were simply selling real estate.
That's right. And now it's more about understanding that consumer, that key end user, where as a residential real estate investor, you want to follow your tenant and population migration patterns and things like that. But when you can cater your product to the consumer and know how to reach more of them, you can be more successful as, like you say, more of a coffee company than a real estate company.
Yeah, and I think one of the big, good, obvious way of showing the transition is we always had, you were on our very first real estate coffee farm tour, right?
Yes, I was. Back in November of 2015. I was on your first ever coffee farm tour in Boquete, Panama, which is in Western Panama.
And you also came to Belize when we had one of our first cacao tours, and they were always catered towards investors that wanted to come and kick the trees.
Right.
Now, a good example of the progression is we had a cacao symposium in Belize in May, and instead of having investors, we had chocolate makers. So we had chocolate makers and chocolatiers from Japan, from Switzerland, from England, from the United States, from Belgium, that were in looking not to invest, but to source product. So that's a good sign of the transition from being the investment company to being the product company. And we're going to have our first coffee symposium in around March of 2020.
Yeah, now Darren touched on cacao. Cacao is the base product for chocolate. So with this coffee farm model that we've been talking about in Panama, where you can buy 1 half-acre at a time, they do nearly the same model in Belize with cacao trees there. So one thing that has not changed over the years is you guys have 3 pillars. One of those 3 sustainable pillars is your social sustainability pillar. So tell us about those 3 pillars.
So the 3 pillars of sustainability, and again, we like to say it's not just a marketing term, we really do act by it. We need to be economically sustainable or we're just not going to be here much longer. So that's number 1. We're environmentally sustainable. We want to make sure we leave at least our little part of the world in a better place than how we found it. An example being we built a state-of-the-art wet and dry coffee processing mill in Boquete on one of our farms. The mill produces absolutely 0 byproduct into the environment around it. It uses 10% of the water of a traditional coffee mill, and even that 10% is recycled. The coffee cherry pulp that's taken off the cherries is recycled through our Californian earthworms in our worm hotel and turned into a great food to go back out into the farms. And even the dry parchment that comes off the coffee in the peeling process is stored until the following year to fire the furnace to dry the next year's crop. So everything that we do obviously helps the environment and also helps the bottom line for our investors, but it's our little way of keeping environmentally sustainable. And then socially, a big key part to what we do, we noticed when we were acquiring these coffee farms back in 2014-15 that the coffee farm workers living on the farms were not really getting a fair shake. So their living accommodations were just deplorable. So we decided if they're going to be the ones that are going to be doing the work and we're in a position to improve their lives, then we're going to do it. So we have a social sustainability pool that helps pay fair and better wages. Coffee farm workers on our farms have Social Security, which in Panama does actually work. They have medical and health benefits, and they have real modern living accommodations. So it's one of the projects we did this year was building a new set of living accommodations. It's not the Ritz, but it's a solid structure with running water, flushing toilets, septic tank system, gas stoves, all the basics that me and you would take for granted is a real luxury to these workers living on their farms, living on our farms. And for us, as David says, it's not all altruistic. We want them to feel like they have an ownership in the business. We want them to care about the farms, and we want them to have a place that they can be proud to call home and get rested when they finish a hard day's work.
That's right. The three pillars of sustainability, environmental, economic, and social. You really care about improving those workers' living conditions there. And I've been inside some of those structures where you've replaced the old wood-burning fires where those laborers used to get cataracts in their eyes from their smoke. I mean, you've improved their living conditions with clean burning stoves. I've been in some of those facilities. So you really care about the labor and you don't want to exploit them as one of your three pillars. You're listening to Get Rich Education. We're talking with Darren Doyle and David Sewell of Agro Nosotros. More when we come back about agricultural real estate investing. This is Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold.
Are you on track to achieve your financial goals? Income-producing real estate is the most historically proven way to accumulate wealth and has created more financial freedom than any other means. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best turnkey cash flow rental properties. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly income. Get your free strategy session with our knowledgeable investment counselors at noradarealestate.com. That's NORADA realestate.com.
Countless property investors get killed with maintenance costs, but that's far less likely when you buy brand new construction. Let me tell you about JWB Real Estate Capital in Jacksonville, Florida. They pioneered the build-to-rent model where you can invest in new construction turnkey rental properties. That's why JWB was featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. To learn more and see inventory, go to newconstructionturnkey.com.
This is the Real Estate Cowboy's John Larson. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're talking with Darren Doyle and David Sewell. They founded a company where you can own coffee farm parcels 1/2 acre at a time, and you can get annual cash flow from the harvest and sale of coffee in an all-done-for-you turnkey way. David, part of this is about understanding your consumer and reaching them where they are. So tell us more about that, more about what you've done in Japan.
We spent a lot of time transitioning from, as Darren accurately described it before, investment company selling real estate that had a plan to be a coffee company. So now we are the exact opposite, to turn the table to a coffee company that also supports itself and its development through the sale of subdivided real estate. We targeted quite early the fact that Japan has a consumer environment that is materially different than everywhere else. For example, the Americans would spend 8% of their net disposable income on food and related products. The Japanese spend 28% on the same thing. I've been actually over there a number of times in the last year, wandering around the stores, looking at the other products that are for sale, the pricing arrangements, and I actually saw a melon that I can buy here in Panama for $1 on a shelf in a very high-end grocery store in Tokyo for $200.
Yeah.
Now that opened my eyes. And I have been researching with a couple that we've joined forces with from Switzerland, particularly a chocolate maker there, both very experienced people having lived in Japan for many, many years. And his name is Werner and his wife is Mitsue. Mitsue is Japanese native. So she is leading us into the market over there with the culture and the habits and the connections and things like that. So we're doing quite well. We have 2 distribution networks set up right now. We've initially shipped cacao to one of those distributors who is investigating coffee further. And we have shipped over product in the coffee department as well. We have numerous prospects there. We just finished attending the Specialty Coffee Association of Japan's annual conference. It's not a big industry there right now, maybe only 1,700 members, where the Specialty Coffee Association in Europe and America would have multiple thousands of members. So it's a good chance for us to get into the market, make an entry with a product and a brand that's brand new, with quality that they've never seen before, and they're quality buyers, so they're not afraid to pay for it. The pricing power we have in Japan is huge, and we like that idea because it's specialty coffee. It's just getting started, so it's not huge volumes. We're not trying to break into China. It's just Japan. They have a lot of people, but they're tea drinkers over history, and they're coming around to coffee. So we have a chance to put micro lots of specialty coffee with high margins into the country, and that's what we're about to do.
You've got to follow the money. Successful businesses are successful to the extent that they understand their customer well. And this is that high-end specialty coffee that's more profitable, and you need to find who that end consumer is going to be and tap into that flow. Tell us about what are some of those names of the coffee varieties that are grown on these specialty farms?
There's lots of different coffee varietals out there. The main difference between commercial coffee and specialty coffee, commercial coffee usually tends to be Robusta, which is a high volume, more resistant, low quality coffee. Arabica is the one that's used in the specialty coffee industry. Arabica then has several different varietals. In our farms, we choose a combination of the most in-demand varietals in the market today and what varietals are most suited to growing in the microclimates in Boquete. So most people have heard of Geisha. It's world famous now, especially in Boquete. We also have Typica. We have Pacamara, Caturra, Catuai, Bourbon. The list goes on. And we usually plant about 6 to 7 different varietals in each farm. And then each of those varietals can actually be processed in multiple different ways, depending on the market. They can be done in the wash process. They can be done honeyed, and they can be processed natural.
So a lot of this comes down to making the opportunity turnkey for that investor that's going to buy that parcel and hold it for the long term. And I am one of your earliest investors, and I've been on you guys' email list for the longest time. And you send these emails with the most interesting updates and photographs of this fantastic verdant green landscape like you have there in Boquete. And one thing that really struck a chord with me, and how this is a truly passive investment, and even more passive than if you own residential real estate and you have someone else manage it, is you sent me an email and it showed a photo of an excavator cutting a trench across one of your dirt access roads. That's usually a steep road that goes up to one of your farms. And that is because a culvert pipe was about to be placed across the road. And the caption for that photo said something like, "This is what passive income looks like." So my point is, there are all these things that you have to keep in mind to keep this as a truly passive investment for that investor that wants to be hands-off that a lot of people wouldn't even think of. So tell us about some more of those things that a lot of investors aren't even thinking about that you're doing logistically in the background to keep this passive.
Yeah, there's so many things going on behind the scenes. And I remember when we were writing that particular newsletter, I just came down from that mountainside with Andres, and I had the mud on my boots, and we were watching what they were doing. And we thought, the people that are investing should really know what's actually going on. So It's a lot more than just you plant a coffee tree and come back to me in 3 years' time and we'll have some coffee. Building the access roads was a big project this year. Anyone that hasn't seen it yet, there's some videos on our websites. We were talking earlier about buying high altitude virgin soil that had never been farmed before. When you buy that, you also have to create access because it has never been farmed before. So we cut a road into the side of the mountain. It was a lot of hard work. We're blessed with having very talented staff and workers in our team that at one stage they had to build a little metal bridge and they just got their welding gear out and they built it themselves. So there wasn't much subcontracting going out. But yeah, there's so much stuff that goes on from when you talk about investing turnkey, making payroll every week, managing 100 employees, deciding what varietals need to be planted, individually managing them, doing the budgets, doing the marketing, doing the grading, doing the sales, and all the infrastructure projects that go on. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes.
There are a ton of moving parts, and both on your website and through your emails, investors and prospective investors are able to see things like drone footage that you have that shows this topography. A lot of it is shade-grown coffee, so it's not just row after row of coffee that's out in the bright sun, and even footage from, for example, your laboratory, which I've been inside, where you do the cupping and grading of the coffee. So there really is a lot going on here. I think a lot of it for the investor comes down to the bottom line. Well, now where do my returns actually come from? Tell us about that.
So in coffee, it's pretty simple. Whatever farm you invest in, say you were to, for example, come into this newest farm and you were to acquire a couple of half-acre parcels, all the revenue and expenses from that particular farm will be pooled. Every year in Panama, we have an annual harvest. The harvest starts in kind of late October through till around March. The coffee will be harvested by us. It'll be individually managed into microlots. It'll be processed. Has to rest for a couple of months so it develops its unique flavors. It'll then be introduced to the market. It'll be graded, marketed, eventually sold. And then we do our distributions in September. We just did our 4th consecutive distribution. I believe you've had 4 of them yourself.
That's right.
And the distribution at the end of the year, the net profit is split 80-20, 80% to the investors and 20% to us.
When the revenue is pooled in this way, that way, if you're an investor that, for example, owns parcels on a southerly slope and those plants got too much sun, so their yield wasn't as high as some others, well, this pooling of the resources within that farm help negate that effect of there being differential production across the farm. So tell us just what one can expect for a rate of return.
The average annual rate of return for coffee is around 10 to 11% on this farm. As soon as we plant the coffee trees, a little bit on the life cycle of a coffee tree. We acquired this farm a year ago. It took 7 or 8 months of growing the saplings in the nursery before they were strong enough to go into the ground. They're being planted as we speak. Those saplings won't give you any cherries for about 3 years. So that's the reason why there's no cash flow in those first early years. Once it starts to produce, you can get a good steady increase of quality and quantity for about 12 years, starts to plateau off around 15 and starts to drop off a little bit again in quality and quantity. At that stage, we start to rotate out the trees, which is another reason why we pool. So in case we have to rotate out the trees on your farm, you don't lose out on your distributions that year. But once those trees hit production and you have a plan to rotate out the trees over the lifestyle of the farm, you can have annual returns every year in perpetuity as long as we keep rotating out the trees.
And I just know through experience that 10 to 11% rate of return that you're talking about does not include any potential appreciation in the land. I've experienced appreciation in the land since I've become an owner. And again, the returns are generated through the sale of the coffee product, which is also all done for you. And you get an annual report with, again, annual cash flow rather than monthly cash flow. So just tell us about the prices and the terms here. How much does it cost for an individual everyday investor to get in?
Traditionally, the half-acre parcels in coffee are $18,000. We very recently launched an end of the decade promotion where now you're able to get a 3-parcel pack for $49,950. So it's a saving of over $4,000 on our traditional retail price. If you want to become a gentleman farmer, you can get a 6-parcel pack for about $96,000, down from around $108,000. And we have some similar prices, price discounts in cacao. And interestingly, at those discounted prices, then your IRR will increase to about 13 or 14%.
Okay, so a pretty modest entry point where a lot of people can get in. And, I think some people that don't really understand what's going on here, sometimes they think, well, wait, that's kind of an expensive price to pay for only 1/2 acre of land. That's even expensive for a 1/2 acre of land with some young trees on it. So can you speak to that they're getting more than just the land here?
Sure. You can come down to Boquete, Panama, and you can buy a 1/2 acre of land for cheaper than that. And you can build your team, you can move down here, you can pay all the legal, you can pay your payroll every week, you can pay your social security, you can hire all the staff. Go for it. Come down and let us know. Yeah, so the whole thing is turnkey. You've got the price of the land, the cost of getting it developed, the cost of getting it deeded to you, all the legal marketing expenses, everything's set up so that once you pay that one-time entry fee, there is no future cost to you.
Yeah, that's certainly substantial. Were there any last things, Darren or David, that I should have asked you about, but I didn't? What else should investors know?
If I was looking at this, one of the questions that come up in conversations that we have quite often on the phone, and you touched on it earlier, is that it's specialty coffee. And that's not just a marketing term like gourmet. Go and check on the Specialty Coffee Association of America website. You can see how it's managed around the world. You can see the increase in consumption in specialty coffee. And you can see the publicly listed prices that specialty coffee sells for. And then this opportunity will make a lot more sense, because if you're looking at Bloomberg Terminal and you see $1 a pound, it doesn't seem to make sense.
Right. This is not the stuff that trades on that open commodities market.
Right. So understanding specialty coffee is a big thing in helping you understand the opportunity. You're investing into a farm that's been run as an operating business, and you're investing with the operators. You're not buying something off someone who's selling you an investment at a trade show. This is our companies, our businesses. We're operating it. You'll be participating alongside us, and we're here for the long run.
David?
I'm very pleased to say that I've enjoyed sitting here and listening to your podcast. After 5 times of being on there, you guys have done a great job. It's very, very well explained. I want everybody to know that they're joining a team. And the team is led by Darren. The team is led by Andres. And the team is led by Jose and Valentina and many, many other people that are in our organization now. It is a team spirit game. There are 100 of us. We have been around for 5 years. We have made payroll every Friday for 52 weeks a year for 5 years. That's a couple times 250 payrolls. You're not joining a startup. You're not joining a speculation. You're joining a coffee company run by a team of people that are all like-minded with their focus on environmental, social, and economic viability on your behalf and on our behalf. Trust me, it's not just altruistic. As Darren said, we get a carried interest in the profits of the company. After we pay our socially sustainable burden of 20%, then that's split 80-20. Our 20% of 80 is 16, and we're in it with you. We don't get paid. If you don't get paid, you're joining a team, and the evidence of the quality of that team is in the presentation that Darren, our president, has just made to you. Very proud. Thank you.
And you know what else? Above and beyond all this, the coffee that I'm able to drink from my own farm that you guys furnish is the tastiest coffee I've ever had in my life. Your coffee simply tastes less bitter to me than most coffees do. Well, I know that when you newly have parcels available, they often sell out quite quickly. What Darren and David have done is they put a coffee report for you at getricheducation.com/coffee, where you can learn more about the benefits, the risks, the returns, and just what you need to do to be a hands-off agricultural investor where you own the land. Darren and David, it's been so great having you back on the show.
Good. Thank you very much. I enjoyed my first time on the show, Keith. Hopefully the first of many.
It will be.
It's been very much fun, Keith. Thanks very much. We appreciate hosting us.
David, the co-founder with Darren, giving credit to the team there. There are 3 pillars of sustainability at their company: societal, economic, and environmental. Part of what we all buy into there in a place like Boquete, Western Panama, with the coffee, or the Toledo district of Southern Belize, which is where the cacao is that you have generations of families that have farmed for those crops there. You have a piece of that culture, and there's a supply of local laborers that are willing to work there because they don't just finally pay them a living wage, but they improve their living conditions, so you can really feel like you're helping to do some good there. In fact, many of the laborers on the farm, like the one that I visited called Cuatro Caminos, they live right there on site at the edge of the coffee tree field. And the expert team of soil scientists and agronomists and more that have successfully been brought in and overlaid on that landscape with those laborers, sometimes those professionals need to tweak things with the laborers that they might have been gotten used to doing for generations. Simple things like don't throw dead coffee cherries on the ground because that attracts insects. There are more than 400 parcel owners now, and the provider has acquired their 11th coffee farm in Panama and 5th cacao farm in Belize. Keep in mind that this is for an investor with what I'll call a patient dollar, because returns start out slowly. It takes a few seasons for young trees to produce any yield. Now, the transitional coffee parcels that I bought had a 9.5% cash-on-cash return in their 4th year from startup, exceeding my expectations there. Who then might this investment not be for? If you're out there hustling and, say, wholesaling and flipping your profits into buy and hold real estate, you're going all out because you plan to get out of the rat race in, say, 24 months or less, and you have a strategic plan for that, well, then this is not going to help you very much if that's your goal. Who is this for? If you want a diversification in income streams, this is a great way to do it. If you have trouble qualifying for mortgage loans, this could also be a good fit for you because there's no mortgage loan here and you can close pretty quickly. If you have idle IRA funds, whether you've converted that IRA into a QRP or not, these parcels are eligible for IRA funds. I know that one might be a big deal to you. Some people have taken a few $100,000 in IRA funds and used them to buy a whole slew of parcels. The provider doesn't always have new parcels available like they do now, and when they do, they usually sell out quite quickly. With their success, they've had pretty steady development now beyond a startup company, and they've seen an increased cost of doing business, just like most anyone. So next year, their prices are expected to go up, coffee parcels likely up to $21,000 each, and cacao $26,000 each. So the timing of this episode is actually really advantageous for you. What they're doing, like they did for me, is say that you buy 3 coffee farm parcels, they will segregate your 3 specific parcels on the formal parcel survey, and it's pretty likely that you can get yours contiguously located all on the same farm. So there you go, and you own property in another nation, and you're an agricultural real estate investor at the same time. Yes, this is within reach for the regular guy on the street. The planting of the trees is also happening now, which is going to give you your cash flow sooner. So again, it's their end of the decade special. A half-acre coffee farm parcel is $18,000. The math works out such that you can get 3 for $16,650 each, or get 6 of them at $16,000 each. And when you buy them that inexpensively, your 20-year average cash-on-cash return then rises from about 11% up to 13 or 14%. Belize cacao parcels are more expensive than the coffee, though as part of this end of the decade special, they've discounted them to a similar extent. You can thank me for this later, maybe even when we're on one of their future tours together. Get started and learn more at getricheducation.com/coffee. You'll also get their 3 introductory emails when you do that. To learn more about the chocolate, start at getricheducation.com/chocolate. Until next week, when I'll be back to help you build your wealth, I'm Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.